Hey there, fellow adventurers of knowledge. Today we're going to dive into a topic that's often hidden in the shadows, but affects millions of people around the world. We're unmasking the truth about urinary incontinence. Imagine going about your daily routine. You're shopping, you're working, you're laughing, while carrying a secret battle. Most people would never even guess. Urinary incontinence affects people from all walks of life, but especially older adults, and yet it remains concealed beneath a veil of silence. Did you know 75% of people with urinary incontinence are not currently being treated? We have to do better, and that's what we're going to discuss in today's video. I'm Dr. Bruce Crawford. I'm a board-certified urogynecologist bringing you content several times a week discussing all kinds of different pelvic floor disorders, bladder control problems, pelvic organ prolapse, sexual dysfunction, even bowel control problems. If you're interested in that, please like this video, subscribe to our channel, and share this with a friend. We'd really appreciate your comments below as well. All right, so before we can talk about this topic, we have to dispel with some of the myths surrounding urinary incontinence that make it so difficult to treat from a public health standpoint. There's just a ton of misinformation out there, and we've got to get rid of it. Number one, the idea that bladder leaks are normal. That is crazy. The fact is, bladder leaks represent something going on either with your nervous system, most commonly with the pelvic floor, and those things can be treated often without surgery and medication. Another myth, my only option is surgery or taking a forever medication. You ever notice how medications that are available, things that are prescribed by your doctor, don't actually cure anything? It's because there's not as much money in a curative drug as there is in a maintenance drug. So all the research and development money goes into a drug that you have to take every day for the rest of your life. Despite the fact that it's expensive, despite the fact that it may have bothersome side effects, your doctor may be quick to prescribe a medication for a condition like overactive bladder, having to go too often, having to go in a hurry, get up too many times at night. But many people, I would say the vast majority, can avoid this with a simple program of pelvic floor rehabilitation. What else? Well, how about the idea that you just have to live with it? Also wrong. This is not an inevitable consequence of childbirth and aging. This is a disorder, and it's a functional disorder generally related to the performance of the pelvic floor. Like all the muscles in our body, the pelvic floor's performance deteriorates with age. I wish there was something you could do about it. You may have noticed nothing seems to improve with aging, except hopefully our sense of humor, because we're going to need it as we get older. But there are things you can do to slow down that process and even reverse it to a degree. The fact is, pelvic floor fitness can have a tremendous beneficial effect, even completely resolve bladder leaks. So that's pretty good news. Don't believe what you hear in the media, that just wearing a pad is a solution to this problem, that you should consider your bladder control issue a badge of honor showing how hard you're working out in the gym. Nonsense. If the pelvic floor is conditioned proportionately to whatever demands you're putting on it, you won't leak urine. Now, degree of pelvic floor performance that's necessary is different between individuals. If you're a professional kickboxer, you need a high-performing pelvic floor to avoid leaks. But if you have a more sedentary lifestyle, you don't need as much pelvic floor performance. So it's more about achieving a degree of pelvic floor performance that meets the threshold dictated by the lifestyle you've chosen. Let's talk about some stories of triumph. This is Susan. Now, she came to us about 2.5 years ago, very distressed. She used to enjoy a very active social life. In fact, for a period of time, she was a competitive ballroom dancer. She came to our office asking if she was a candidate for a sling surgery. But you know what? The conversation ended there. When we never had to readdress it. After 28 days of training with the Pilates method, she was 60% improved and very encouraged. She persisted, and in 90 days, her problem was completely resolved. Susan has never looked back. Just 3 months was all it took for her to take back control herself. She started showing up with a totally different temperament, new clothing, new confidence, and this is just one of many examples of how pelvic floor fitness training can resolve bladder control problems. And here's another story that might give you encouragement. This is Marguerite. When she came to us, she was 63 years old and unable to travel. That was her main complaint. She and her husband had just recently retired, and they bought one of those little camper vans with the intention of visiting as many national parks in the United States as possible, but the little camper van didn't have a bathroom in it. She was having to empty her bladder every 30 minutes. And that essentially made travel impossible. We talked about a lot of different therapeutic options, but with lifestyle changes, changing the fact that she was drinking 3 or 4 cups of coffee every morning, glass of wine at night, getting rid of those things, a bladder retraining program. If you don't know what that is, check out the video on this channel about bladder retraining. It's a simple thing anyone can do. And pelvic floor exercise, she was able to avoid taking a medication. You see, she was already taking several medications, one for blood pressure, one for cholesterol. She already was complaining of dry mouth and just didn't want to add another one. And you know what? She didn't have to. It took about 3 months, but ultimately, she was able to travel with confidence and the freedom that she and her husband had dreamed about all their working lives. So let's talk a little bit about the science behind bladder control. I think it really helps when you're making decisions about how to approach these problems. You remember Susan from earlier in the video? Susan had stress urinary incontinence. Stress urinary incontinence, or SUI, occurs when the urethra is too weak or too slow to respond to movement or heavy lifting, coughing, sneezing, laughing, that kind of thing. This problem is extremely common, especially if you've had children. And it's extremely likely that you can resolve this problem by getting the pelvic floor stronger and faster. You see, it's not just about strength, it's about strength and speed. So using a dynamic fitness instrument like Pilates, a technique that involves movement, helps both strength and speed of the pelvic floor, and stress incontinence responds very quickly. Now, Marguerite had a different problem. You may have already recognized this. Marguerite had overactive bladder. Now, overactive bladder is a disorder of the autonomic nervous system. The peripheral nervous system is divided into 2 pieces. There's the portion that we use to activate the muscles of our body to move around the way we want to, but then there's this whole other side called the autonomic nervous system that controls the function of the internal organs, your heart rate, blood pressure, respiratory rate, but also bladder function. But there's this thing called a somatoautonomic or somatovisceral reflex. That is to say, by using certain muscles, you can adjust the function of the autonomic nerves. Now, for our purposes, by using the pelvic floor, you can adjust the nerves that go to the bladder and make it less necessary to void more frequently than you'd like to, and less likely that you'll have episodes of leakage before you can get to the bathroom quickly enough. So having this information really puts you in the driver's seat. When you see your doctor, let your doctor know that you'd like to try something on your own first before taking a prescription, and certainly before going to sleep in the operating room to have a sling surgery or something like that. There's a lot that you can do outside of the healthcare system, but none of this is a replacement for the healthcare system. You still have to work with your physician and let them know if you're successful. You probably will be, but if you're not, it's not a failure. There still are good medical solutions to these problems. It's really time to end the stigma and start open conversations. Together, we can create a world where no one feels ashamed or isolated because of urinary incontinence. Remember that knowledge is power. By shedding light on urinary incontinence, we can help others find support, discover treatments, and live their lives to the fullest. So, subscribe to our channel, share our videos with people you may know that you think can benefit from it, and let us know how you're doing. We really want to hear from you in the comments below. We really appreciate your time with us today. Check out our website, Pilates.com. It's kind of a weird name, Pilates.com. It's kind of like Pilates with an F stuck in there for pelvic floor Pilates. So Pilates.com. There's all kinds of resources you can take advantage of. And again, let us know your experience. We're going to be seeing you soon. Thanks a lot.